Call of the Void contains strong language and possible trigger warnings and is intended for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi, I'm Daekon.
Hi, I'm Jack.
And welcome to Call of the Void, a podcast about all things weird and macabre.
Dude. So I'm gonna tell you a thing today that is it's one of the most ridiculous, off-the-wall, bonkers, crazy real-life stories I've ever read. And there's so much of this that there's just so much. I was pretty thorough. Last year around, about December of last year, I was first made aware of this, and I went pretty far down the rabbit hole then. And when I was doing some research as a refresher this time, I found out shit I didn't find at all back then.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, there's a lot. So, for you guys, at home, I need to specify a couple of things right off the bat before I get started. Number one, because there's so much of this, I'm going to, either for time constraints, purposely, not go into stuff, or I'm going to genuinely forget to talk about stuff because there is just so much. The second thing is, this is still kind of an active thing that's going on, so be safe out there and be aware online because there are people like this out there. And the third thing is, the person that I'm talking about, that I'm going to be telling all of you guys about, is, he's this guy named Andrew Blake. Andrew Blake is a trans man, and that is only pertinent to the story because of the fact that he, at some point, claimed that his transness made him act out in the way that he did, and also for the sake of clarity, because this guy went by a trillion names. Some of them were like two of the names were Amy Player and Victoria Bitter. So for the sake of clarity, that's why I bring that up. Because otherwise it has nothing to do with anything, and I wouldn't bring it up at all if not for that.
I am very terrified of everything that you're about to tell me.
You should be. Because this is as a matter of fact, it's funny because you're the reason I even went down this rabbit hole, despite the fact that you don't know of this person, you don't know anything about this. And the reason is because I found out when I stumbled on a tweet warning the Critical Role fandom that this guy was trying to infiltrate, essentially, the fandom. And it came with a Tumblr post, which I will read to you now.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I'm intrigued.
So this Tumblr post included a picture of a screenshot. It was a screenshot of what popped up in the Critical Role Discord server. And the person who posted it, tabletop-miracles on Tumblr, posted this and said, "This showed up on the Critical Role Discord today. Please be careful when you are online, or when you are on the internet, critters." And this is what that post on Discord said. "At everyone. Hey y'all, not a cheerful update today, but extremely important information, especially for the biddies here. Recently on Twitter, a few people noticed that a guy named Andy Venfiction has started posting CR fan art and making his way into the fandom. This guy has an extremely infamous fandom history with a variety of fandoms, including Supernatural, Lord of the Rings, and Harry Potter. He is well known for preying on teenagers, conning them out of money, committing identity theft, and trapping them in abusive relationships with his cult of personality. He is fond of getting in good with content creators of a given community. Parentheses, he's already been spotted trying to talk to the cast. And then using his supposedly friendly relationship with said creators to make himself seem more appealing and positioning himself as a big name fan. Liam has already been messaged by a concerned citizen who informed him of Andy Then Fiction, Andrew Blake, and his misdeeds, and Liam was appropriately concerned and agreed to mute the guy and hopefully won't be putting his art on the reels. If you'd like resources on this, he's got a fandom lore page, but it's a little dense. There's a decent summary of his shit here. They posted a link. But this is from 2 years ago, so it's not exactly recent. Please be safe, and if you have friends in the community who aren't here to see this message, please pass it on. I know he only just joined the fandom, but the sooner people are aware of how dangerous he can be, the less damage he can do. So I took the link to that Tumblr page, and I sent it to you because, like, I vaguely know stuff in the Critical Role community, but I'm not, like... I wouldn't necessarily call myself a fan. I like the individual people, involved with it, but I've never actually, like, sat down and really watched Critical Role.
Yeah,
but,
and as someone who is like a huge Critical Role fan, I know for a fact that when somebody, like, super problematic pops up in the community, the first thing that, Matt and everybody do is they kind of do their research, and they do this thing where they're like, we're just going to soft cut them off without saying anything. We're just going to mute them. And if they become super vocal, then we'll say something about it. And so I've not really seen too much in the way of things with that. And I have never seen anything with that name pop up in the art reels, so that's very good, and I'm very glad that Liam is taking the advice on that, because he's the one who handles all the art reels. But this is still like I'm still very scared by everything you're about to tell me.
So that concerned person was very smart going to Liam first.
Yes, very, very, very smart, because Liam and Taliesin are usually the ones that handle art. They're the ones who, like, corroborated to get the art book made. They're the ones who kind of, like, approve or reject art that goes in the art reels before the episodes every week. That kind of thing. So it was a very smart move to go to Liam first, because he was the one who, like, started making a portfolio of critter art.
Because
that goes before the episodes.
Blake is a very good artist. I've seen his artwork. Like his sketches are beautiful. Like he's a very talented artist. So he probably would have gotten on the reel at some point. So kudos to whoever you are that did that. But yeah, so as of now, he should be around 34 years old. So we're talking about a grown-ass man here. We're not talking about, like, some 15-year-old who does shit for shits and grins because he doesn't realize the ramifications of his actions. Like, we're talking about a grown-ass adult here. So, yeah.
And, I would like to say, unfortunately, there are still grown-ass adults out there who do this sort of thing and don't know the ramifications of their actions.
Oh, absolutely.
But,
like, so my stomach's actually turning thinking about all of the shit I'm about to tell you, because there's a bunch of shit I'm gonna drop on you and you're gonna be like, you're lying.
I'm
like,
ready
there's
for it.
no way.
I'm ready for it.
Okay. So
bring it.
Alright, so this shit has been going on since roughly 2004. I mean 2002 rather, not 2004. And it's still happening today, where he's trying to get into fandoms. And his MO is the same every single time. So I'm going to focus primarily on two fandoms, the two big ones, which were the Lord of the Rings and the Harry Potter, that really were the height of the absolute craziness.
The fuckery.
Yeah, the huge fuckery.
The
fuckery.
Capital T fuckery.
Yeah. So there were more than this, but a few of the names that he's gone by, I mentioned Amy Player and Victoria Bitter. For Victoria Bitter, sometimes that persona was referred to as VB. There's Voyager Babe, because one of the things that he was involved with at the time was the Star Trek Voyager fandom. Jordan Wood, then Fiction, Andy then Fiction, and Andrew Blake, which is his name and his legal name now. He got it changed. So his MO is like the person who posted on Discord, is he will become very friendly with content creators, with cast and whatnot. He will rise up the ranks and become like a very popular person within a fandom. And then, like, by all accounts, when you first meet him, he's super likable. Like, he's very charismatic. He seems like really smart. Like, objectively, he's attractive. So it's one of those things where, you know, he builds up the crazy, essentially. So at the start, which anybody that's ever been, like, anybody that's ever read or seen anything about cults, that's one of the things that happens. At the start, it all seems very logical or, like, very harmless, and then the next thing you know, you're doing shit and thinking...
You're drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, you're drinking the Kool-Aid.
Like, very literally.
Yeah. So, as mentioned before, he tried to get into Critical Roles and Supernatural. For and Teen Wolf was another one. There's so many that he's been involved in. But, for Supernatural, he took part in, the greatest international scavenger hunt the world has ever seen, which, for anybody that doesn't know what that is, lovely human being who plays Castiel, Misha Collins, started it, and it's like this really cool group sort of thing, and he got in, and, you know, and I didn't... What?
Gishwes?
Yeah, Gishwes. Yeah. I was trying to figure out how to pronounce that properly.
Yeah, Gishwes.
Yeah. So, and then he did the thing that he always does when he, by every account I've read, when he wasn't getting his way, because when he tried to do the scavenger hunt, he essentially showed up, and when nobody was following everything he said to do, he started to throw a temper tantrum. So, Lord of the Rings, I'm going to start there because that's, like, one of the big ones.
Oh boy. I'm strapping in. I'm putting on my computer seatbelt.
Yeah.
I'm getting ready.
Lace up your running shoes.
Yep.
So he started, it was around the time that he was going by Victoria Bitter, I believe. It was sometime in 2002. And again, because this, like, I almost said DeviantArt, wow. Like, the Discord post that I read before says, this is very dense, so if I get timeline things a little confused, that's why.
It's totally fine.
Yeah.
Look,
So,
if anything is missed, like she said before, this is a thing that you should probably take a deep dive into yourself if you're interested in it.
yeah.
We're not.
I mean, you should anyway. It's very...
We're realistically not going to have enough time here to talk about everything.
Which is also why I'm focusing on these two big things. So, it was sometime in 2002 that he started this website. I believe he started it with his then girlfriend, who... She had just gotten out of a marriage. She went through a divorce. Her name is Abby Stone. I'll be mentioning and quoting Stone later. At the time, she was going by Orange Blossom. So, I believe it was both Blake and Stone that created this website called Bit of Earth. And it was a Samwise Gamgee fan site. And then they decided to kind of turn it into, like, a charity thing. So, they decided to do this thing called Project Eleanor, which was... For anybody that doesn't know, Eleanor was one of Sam's children. And, so the whole thing was they were going to plant this garden, and they were going to read... stories to kids, and they were raising money to donate to this literacy group called Reading is Fundamental. And because of all of this, they actually gained the attention of Sean Astin, who showed up in person and helped them build up the garden and everything like that. And because he's an advocate for literacy, and he actually does do gardening and stuff like that. So it was just this really cool thing. And Stone, the night before the event, there was a screening of Lord of the Rings Two Towers. And before or after the movie, that doesn't matter, but one of those, she made this announcement saying that the $3,000, I believe, that they received, that all the proceeds would go to the charity. The problem was, there were no proceeds. They used all of the money on this event. And the whole thing was that, like, Stone said in a blog post about the whole thing that, like, they really were trying to do a good thing, but they were in way over their heads and didn't know how to do it. And, like, they were just kind of concerned with, you know, putting on a good front, I guess. And, yeah. And both of them, both Stone and Blake, according to Stone herself, said that they were kind of behaving like children. Like, she had been really whiny at the time, and, like, Blake was doing his thing that he always does, and, like, when he doesn't get his way, and whatever. To the point where Sean Astin himself took them both over to the side and gave them a stern talking to. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and, yeah. So this is what Stone said about that whole thing. We had the screening of The Two Towers the night before, where I stood in front of the whole theater and said we'd raise $3,000, and that all the proceeds would go to Reading is Fundamental. I know I said proceeds, because even before the screening, I knew we were in the red for the garden. Although I do still have some of the paperwork and receipts from the event, including proof that Par Lumber was in fact paid, there isn't much left. We spent ourselves empty to cover the last of it. The money wasn't where the lies were. It was the people. The humble, retired gardener that planned the garden. That was the real Samwise Gamgee, as channeled by Andy, which I'll get into what that means in a second. The interview questions written by Elijah Wood, again, just Andy. The frantic, hidden conversations with Andy's various characters. We were the lie, not the project. So, what that's about, as part of this whole cult mentality, one of the things that he had people genuinely believing is that he was able to channel other people, like other souls. Like, he was the quote-unquote duplicate soul of Elijah Wood, which is why he took on the alias Jordan Wood, and he would tell people that he was Elijah Wood's cousin. Yeah. He made up a whole bunch of shit about Elijah Wood's past that he supposedly knew because he could channel him. Like, he was channeling characters. Like, he told Stone that she was Elrond's adopted daughter. And, like, this is going to sound really, like, I know that there are going to be people that are going to be like, you know, like, how do people believe this shit and everything? Well, when somebody, like, kind of suckers you in and makes everything seem kind of rational in the beginning, by the time they get into the crazy stuff, and especially, like, there's that BoJack Horseman line when you're looking at somebody with rose-colored glasses, red flags look like flags. Like,
yeah,
it's that kind of a thing. By the time, like, you think that you can trust this person, you don't think that this person would ever lie to you, and at this point, like, he had already been severely gaslighting Abby Stone, and, like, he legit brainwashed her.
Yeah.
And Stone, and here's one of the big differences between Stone and Blake. Stone, whereas she says, yes, you know, like, he did brainwash me, this is what happened to me, this is the abuse that I suffered under him and everything, she still owns up to the bullshit that she caused.
Yeah, her own mistakes.
Yeah, and she's like, look, you know, like, I did those things. That was me. Whereas, there's an apology note that I'm going to read a quote from in a minute, that I believe it was after all of this, because it was definitely before, it was during the Lord of the Rings thing, and it was definitely before the Harry Potter thing, where Andrew Blake essentially, like, makes a whole bunch of excuses. He's like, look, I'm really sorry, and, you know, I don't want people to take pity on me, but here's a bunch of things to make you sympathize with me.
Here's a bunch of things to make you take pity on me.
Exactly. Yeah.
The best kind of apology, where you don't actually apologize for anything, and it's
absolutely.
basically, I'm sorry you got offended for it.
Absolutely. And, like, anybody who has ever known somebody who is remotely like that can see through that. Because there's this
with
thing.
A very manipulative personality.
Yeah, he's super, super manipulative. And on top of that, like, I mentioned that some stuff has been more recent and everything. And I believe it was something, or I think it was around 2015, one of the things that he started to claim was that, oh, I'm schizophrenic, that's why this is going on. You know,
okay.
Like, but the way
that there's some sort of, I will say that there is, it is very obvious that there is some sort of mental illness going on here.
Absolutely.
That's at play. And I don't, we've talked about a lot on this show, I mean, before, and we've only got, like, how many episodes behind us so far, but
yeah,
we've talked about a lot of things that, like, dealt with, like, mental illness or those kind of things, and I don't want I don't want that to come across like, I'm saying that as a bad thing.
Oh no. But
I
that's
very
the thing.
much hope. Yeah, I mean, I very much hope that like whoever this is gets help or whatever. But I mean, personally, and I've kind of said this before. I don't think I've ever said this to you personally. But a thing that I've used in the past is that like the phrase "we're kind of all full of ghosts."
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
They scream in our brains and kind of rattle around in there and scare everybody else around us and ourselves. But like, I feel like there's not a single person out there who doesn't suffer from something or doesn't have something, going on, because we can't all like have super perfect mental states all the time. So I'm not like saying that like there's anything bad with him having schizophrenia or anything else like that, but
now
there is obviously some sort of mental illness at play here.
There's something, but everybody close to him, or everybody that was close to him, has laid it out. He meant to do everything that he did. He was calculating. He knew what he was doing. And a whole bunch of people, when he started to say, oh no, I'm schizophrenic, like, I wasn't really channeling people, like, that was because of my schizophrenia. That pissed off so many people. One of them actually wrote, like, how dare you? Because there are people out there who actually are going through that.
Yeah.
And are so misunderstood. And you're just very cavalierly using it as an excuse for your shitty behavior.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I said, I mean, God, I don't even know, because he exhibits a lot of signs of like sociopathic tendencies, which
again we don't want to armchair psychologist this.
No, I'm not at all. But like,
yeah,
just there are certain tendencies that like he's exhibiting that are also present in like known sociopaths. Yeah. And that it's like I said, I'm not trying to like say that as a bad thing or like, even with the schizophrenia thing, I don't want anybody to think that like, that it's an awful thing to have schizophrenia, because it's not. Like I said, we're all full of ghosts.
It's an awful thing to have to deal with, but it doesn't make you awful.
Yeah.
Is essentially what we're saying. Yeah. And like, and both Deacon and I suffer from mental health issues and everything, and it doesn't make you less than. But that, like, I don't have schizophrenia. I've met someone who does, but I wouldn't say that I know them. I know somebody close to them, but I don't know them. But like, honestly, that pissed me off, because here's the thing. And even when I go into the apology letter, because like I said before, one of the reasons I brought up the fact that he's trans is because in his apology letter, he brought up that fact a bunch of times as though it excused anything he did.
Which it does not.
It doesn't. And here's the thing. No matter what you've been through in your life, no matter what you are currently going through, nothing excuses you from being a decent human being, or at least trying to be a decent human being. So, no matter what he's going through, like, I feel bad. Like, I feel bad for him for certain things, but that still does not excuse any of this fuckery.
Yeah.
And the simple fact that he continuously uses the same MO over and over again. Like I said, this whole Project Eleanor thing was back in 2002. He's still trying to get into fandoms and build up a following.
Yeah.
So, and let's get back into that. So, because of the quote-unquote success of Project Eleanor, they decided that they were going to try to do another event. That's when Tent Moot came about. And what Tent Moot was supposed to be a Lord of the Rings. It was initially supposed to be a party, and then Blake started referring to it as though it was supposed to be a convention. So there was this other person, I don't remember their username. I think their last name was Ren, though, Renne. So yeah. I'm going to refer to her name as that. So Ren was one of the people that he had at his disposal at the time. There were 3 core people around him. There was Stone, Ren, and this other person who goes by Diamond. Diamond, essentially, from everything that I've read, is one of the only few people that, like, their hands are completely clean and they really were just used by him. And, you know, like, Stone, like I said, Stone admits that she did some shit because, you know, she wanted to make Blake happy and everything. But, so, anyways, Tent Moot. They were going to do this whole thing, this big convention, and Blake goes to Ren at one point and says, like, excuse me, I don't know what to do now because the airline that was going to fly in the actors that were going to come, and there were actors that were coming, like, genuinely, there were actors that were going to come to this little convention. And he was like, you know, I don't know, because, like, I had a deal with the airline to fly them in for free, and they just backed out of the deal. So Ren paid the airline for the airfare. Then she finds out that Blake never had any kind of deal with them to begin with. So he essentially, or not essentially, he did con her into paying for their airfare. Luckily for her, she found out in time and was able to cancel the tickets. But if I recall correctly from my reading, that also left the actors stranded.
Yeah. So,
like, and I'm not blaming Ren for that, but, like, this was just one big shit show. So now, oh, and she wrote a book about the whole thing. I haven't read the book yet. I've been thinking about it. And the book is called When the Fan Hits the Shit. And it's about the whole, cover title. And it's about this whole
really
tent,
good.
And it's about this whole Tent Moot debacle. That's a word. So, it was at this time that, because Blake, who at this point, by the Tent Moot shit, he was going by Jordan Wood. But that wasn't his legal name. And when he signed up for shit for the convention, he signed his name as Jordan Wood.
No.
Yeah. So because of this, let me backtrack a little bit. So, Amy Player / Victoria Bitter. I don't remember exactly which thing happened that caused this, but Amy / Victoria had committed suicide.
What?
Yep. So,
wait.
Yeah. So, he had Stone go online and talk about how, Amy was dead and, you know, like, and, you know, Amy killed herself and this whole thing. And I think it was because, if I recall, and I could be wrong, I think the incident that happened that caused that was because people found out that he didn't actually know all of these people that he claimed to, and that he was this big giant fraud. But now Stone is living with this other person, Jordan Wood, who now it's her new lover, her new partner, Jordan Wood. So because of this, the whole tent moot thing, it came to light because there was a fraud investigation because he signed his non-legal name to these things. It came out that Jordan Wood was actually this person that everybody had thought was dead this whole time, which then led Jordan Wood to try to commit suicide again. He sent a suicide letter to his actual parents. In real life, he did this. He sent a note to his parents, and he took, I forget exactly what it was that he took, but it was it was stuff that would not have made him die. He just took a shit ton of stuff and was hospitalized.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So then I think the apology letter came before Stone finally got out of that. So let me tell you a little bit about this apology letter. Like I said, it's basically I'm sorry, but here's what I did that contributed to that, and you should feel sorry for me. The whole thing. So at one point he talks about how he had been a theater major or had gone into theater, and that his professor was this and I was abruptly adopted as the pet of an egotistical, manic-depressive, failed artiste with delusions of grandeur, who was simultaneously the most loved and most hated professor in the theater department, and by the most bohemian inner core of theater people, including trying to have a boyfriend with a semi-goth Australian. Yeah. So he goes on to say about her, I had serious problems at this point being able to tell the truth. Now, he had already been kind of infamous online because when he was younger, when he was a younger teenager, he developed this persona. It might have actually been the whole Amy Player thing, but he developed this persona about this, that he played he was this girl who survived sex trafficking, and it was this whole big ridiculously awful backstory.
Yeah.
So he's been lying on the internet essentially his whole life. So, and yeah, so that's what this is referring to. I had serious problems at this point being able to tell the truth, because everything I said might endanger another lie and make someone not like me and or find out. Yes, I felt terribly alone. But all this wasn't because something was wrong with me. It was because I was special, wonderful, gifted, a miracle even. Okay, I'm gonna try.
Humble.
I'm really. Oh, dude.
Modest.
So the person that I found this letter, because you can't find it anywhere now. There's only one place that has it, and the person who posted it with their own caveats in between things, and they kept a counter of they called it the a virgin counter, whenever he was but I was new to this, or the alas, what was it? Alas, take pity on me counter. It's insane. And there was this one callback line that they kept putting in, which was like, I'm not doing this for forgiveness or whatever, like, or for you to take pity on me or some bullshit like that. So I am going to try really fucking hard not to laugh as I read this next part, because all of this is super serious and fucked up, and none of it is remotely funny, but dear God, this line is one of my, like, there's a line coming up that is one of my favorite things I've ever read. So, I'll backtrack a little bit. But all this wasn't because something was terribly wrong with me. It was because I was special, wonderful, gifted, a miracle even. I was a paladin. She told me, a spiritual and psychic warrior capable of channeling the spirits of others, ghosts, demons, the living, the dead, even the non-human. The church would never... because he grew up in a very Catholic family. So he brings up God and the church, which is another thing that he blames for everything. He also blames this woman that he claims, like, that was such an influential figure in his life, but he doesn't remember her name. And he blames this other person for putting the seeds in his head for this. So, and, before he transitioned, he identified as a lesbian, which is another thing that he blames for everything. So, the church would never accept me, but the goddess knew what I really was and loved me, and the priestess would help me love and understand myself as a rare lesbian paladin. I thought I was going to be able to do it. I couldn't. Deacon. My dude, if I die before you, make fucking certain that they put rare lesbian paladin on my tombstone.
I'm gonna make a note of it literally right now. Because...
oh shit.
What a line.
Rare lesbian paladin. Okay.
Right.
I need to...
That's literally written in my phone now.
Oh, good. Oh, God. I need that. I need that on my tombstone.
I don't really... Look, I've played enough... I've played enough D&D games in my life to know that those aren't very rare. So.
Dude, because, like, throughout this thing, like, it is rife with, like... It is rife with, like, oh, I was so sheltered, I didn't know these things, and, like, and he paints, like, he's very much of that, like, oh, I came from a Catholic background, so homosexuality was a sin, and blah, blah, blah. So, rare lesbian paladin.
Literally, like, every other gay in the universe has experienced the same backlash as you have.
But that's the thing,
oh
like...
my god.
Like, there are times in this letter where he tries to use his transness as a way, like I said before, as a way to absolve himself and to make you feel sorry for him that he was going through all of that. Which, gender dysphoria is no fucking joke.
It's not.
That's one of the things that I said, that truly I do feel sorry for him, that, like, he was going through that, and, like, because it's not a fun thing at all. But at the same time, like, he also, I forget exactly what it was, but he tried to link being gay with being trans, but it didn't quite work in that capacity. I do not remember the line, and I'm sorry, I don't, but anyway.
Well, so maybe that's why he was drawn to Critical Role, because
but
it
my
is one of
dude,
those things where there is a gay paladin, a gay lesbian,
but there was
paladin.
this letter was written back in like 2003, 2004 maybe.
I know, that's why I said, like, that maybe that's why he was drawn to Critical Role whenever it came along.
Yeah.
Because, you know, Kima's a lesbian paladin, so...
Yeah. The rare lesbian paladin.
Fuck.
I knew.
So rare.
I fucking knew.
I'm a rare gay
I knew
warlock.
I wouldn't be able to get through that part. But put it on my tombstone, along with me screaming for ages about how people need to chill out about Avenged Sevenfold Hail to the King album. But that's a discussion for a whole other time.
Anyway.
Yeah. So let's see.
Rare lesbian paladin.
Rare lesbian paladin. The reason I felt divorced from my body is that I could separate from it to allow the souls of others. It's also why I felt so connected to the male characters from my writings, because male spirits regularly flowed through me, because my lesbian energies were very compatible to them. Already near my wit's end, I swallowed it, hook, line, and pentacle. It was the closest thing I'd ever had to an answer, and most tellingly, I thought she had approached me with it, telling me my darkest shames and where they had come from. So.
I'm so confused. Why is
Yeah.
this still the apology letter?
Yeah,
Like,
this is the apology
why
letter.
Is this include? Okay, why is this something that is necessary to say?
Because
in
he's
your
blaming somebody
apology
else.
letter?
Because he's blaming somebody else.
Well, I mean,
he's saying
yes, but
this nameless woman who may or may not actually exist was the one
my
that put
girlfriend
all
who
of
lives
this...
in Canada.
Exactly. I had a friend who did have a girlfriend who lived in Canada, and I tried very hard not to sing that song every single time. But but yeah, because that's part of the MO. It's always somebody else's fault. I'm taking ownership, but I'm letting you know that somebody else planted these seeds in my head.
Oh my god.
Like, I was the victim here. Feel bad for me, but I am sorry.
I know that you're only talking about like the Lord of the Rings stuff, and you haven't even gotten to the Harry Potter stuff, which I know is going to infuriate me as like a huge fan of Harry Potter. But fuck this guy.
No, you're really the Harry Potter stuff kind of gets really fucking dark, but
it's going to piss me off, and I know it. I'm ready for it. I'm preparing mentally, but
So further down in the letter, there he talks about an incident that I'm going to talk about from Stone's perspective, because she wrote 2 very in-depth blog posts about it. But I'm going to tell you from his perspective first in the apology letter, which in her posts she does reference the letter that Blake wrote. So, in October, an opportunity presented us to move to Toronto to help manage a small cafe and live in an attached apartment as roommates with the owners. We felt that this was a perfect opportunity, excuse me, as not only could we fully move back into the quote-unquote normal workforce, but we could get a fresh start and be really honest with people, as we didn't have pre-existent relationships there, created under a need to hide my insanity or my gender situation. We told people that we were moving out east, flying to New York. This was true. Flying to Buffalo and meeting our employer there saved over half on tickets. So that we could leave that far behind and live like normal people. God, however, does not allow Jonah to flee. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Ninevah is the word. The Toronto opportunity was a scam, and we were stranded in Buffalo. In early February of this year, nothing makes you look at your life like 20 degrees below freezing wind chill. I had already become a Christian again over the course of my therapy, once I knew that I was just another example of God's infinite diversity and not some terrible creature. But at the border, it seemed like he was speaking to me. You can't run. You can change. You have changed. You can grow up, and you have grown up. You can mature, and you have matured. And you can go on living a normal life, but you must deal with what you have done in the past. I may be able to wipe your sins clean as though they never happened, but that does not absolve you of needing to face those you've sinned against. So we called Orange Blossom's mother, again, Stone, and my parents, and we have reconnected with our families. I am home now, as I write this, patching things up with my parents, and at the end of this month, we'll be moving on to a regular job and apartment with Orange Blossom and our little pet bird. More on that bird in a minute. Our relationship has grown from two severely screwed up people clinging to each other to something amazingly precious and tried by fire, and we hope to spend the rest of our lives together. So that was important to read to you. And that's the last excerpt I'm going to read from his apology letter. That was important to read to you because he wrote that during a time where they were separated from each other. Because that was true. They did, like, call each other's parents, call their parents, rather, and reconnect with their families. But it wasn't as he said it happened. She, at this point, because of an incident that happened with the whole Canada thing, finally was done. And her mom, over many, many years, had tried to figure out a way to loosen Blake's hold on her and get her back. The two blog posts that I mentioned that I'm going to be reading from in a second are called Project Catch and Release Part 1 and Part 2. And Blake wrote that during that time where she was essentially being deprogrammed and he was staying with his family. So he wrote that apology letter during that time, and in order to make sure that everything went smoothly, she kind of yesed him to death and was like, yeah, we're gonna, everything's gonna be fine, we're gonna get back together. She really didn't want to get back together.
Yeah.
So this is from... So the part about trying to go to Canada was corroborated by Stone. The part about going to Buffalo was true. The reason why they were going was not because of a job opportunity. It was because he had become convinced that the government was after them. And that, because at the time they were living in LA and they were doing how people dress up as characters on the strip and everything, that's what they were doing for money, which they were conning people out of money there, because they decide, anytime somebody new showed up, they would say that they were a part of the not the union, but something like that, and they had to pay dues in order to stay there with everybody. And apparently, there had been some paranoid people saying that the government was going to come after them. And, so he got super paranoid. And he was like, we're fleeing to Canada. And this is how we're going to do it. The plan was to fly to Buffalo and fucking walk into Canada. And they were going to... Okay. Yeah, and Jordan, at the time, was channeling one of his people who had allegedly been a Mountie and was talking about how easy it is to seek asylum in Canada and telling them what they had to do. So... And he decided to walk so this way they wouldn't have to get a passport to fly, despite the fact that she already had a passport and he had valid ID.
Yeah. So
they could have flown into Canada and figured out their shit from there. But this is how they decided to do it. Or how he decided to do it. So this is about when they were walking. Stone writes, finally, late at night, we landed in Buffalo, to the coldest weather either of us had ever experienced. By now, Jordan was claiming that his illness had progressed to pneumonia. Oh yeah, they both had severe chest colds at this time, too.
Oh.
Yep. Jordan was claiming that his illness had progressed to pneumonia and thus had, quote-unquote, shut down his abilities to bring anyone through. He could sometimes see them, but was too sick to really communicate. Thus, we were completely on our own. We walked the frozen streets of Buffalo for hours, dragging ourselves from hotel lobby to hotel lobby to keep warm enough to move, occasionally catching a bus to get us closer. The wheels gave out on one of the suitcases and we were forced to abandon it. I really should have at least seen that coming. There had been mention of packing the most important stuff all in one bag in case we couldn't carry it all. Eventually, we were dragging ourselves across the Peace Bridge. It was the last endless leg of the journey, and I was filled with relief and hope. There were these incredible, perfect star-shaped snowflakes falling on us, and I remember thinking that I'd never seen a snowflake that looked like a snowflake before. I remember that cold, roaring water beneath us, and the wind that was so frigid that every breath was pain. I remember that glorious moment when we walked into the Border Patrol office, where it was warm and dry. Any minute, we'd be signing our forms for political asylum and could start our new life. We had made it. That was just before she goes into how they fucking laughed in their faces when Blake explained why they were there, and like Blake has done so many times before, according to so many people, essentially had a temper tantrum and started crying and wailing when they told them, no, this is not happening. So at this point, Stone was like, I'm fucking done. After Stone's deprogramming and after she got away and everything, remember I said I would talk about more about the bird in a minute?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that Blake did to try to discredit her and make people hate her online, which, in the interest of fairness, there were a lot of those people anyway at this point. She hadn't begun to try to mend bridges yet. Like, she was still in for the long road ahead at this point. But he claimed that Stone had his son and would not let him see his son, and had essentially kidnapped his son. The son he was talking about was their pet sparrow named Boo. Yeah. So, he had wrote this letter during her deprogramming and everything. He wrote this letter, and in the letter he claimed that he was done with fandoms, he would never do any of this ever again. Which is where the Harry Potter stuff came from. Comes into play. Because the Harry Potter stuff happened immediately after, almost. He became super popular for this fan fiction he wrote called Dumbledore's Army in the Year of Darkness. Or DAYD, DAYD.
Yeah.
And this was so popular that his followers, which he did amass, his followers, not a lot from what I gather, but enough. His followers were called Daydians. And, like, the whole thing is about, like, while Harry, Ron, and Hermione and all of them were out finding the Horcruxes and everything, like, it takes place from Neville's point of view, and, like, so he gained some followers because of this. He infiltrated the Harry Potter fandom. And one note of interest before I leave Stone behind on this journey, she wrote a letter to the Daydians, an open letter, which is also on her blog. She goes by Kumquat Writer, now. But in this letter, she explains how she knows that, you know, like, she knows the tactics he uses. She knows that they're confused right now and everything. She posted some of the most troubling things about all of this, like a pamphlet that he had started writing up, that they were going to give quote unquote new recruits, about how to talk to people and get through their rationality to make them start believing. And like, there were cards from like an alternate version of the year 1944, the people that he channeled from there, like Stone's quote-unquote adopted son from this timeline got her a Mother's Day card. At one point, a whole bunch of these characters that he created had gotten pregnant, and Stone says that he kind of became a little bit obsessed with the idea of pregnancy. And one of the scariest things I read was that, like, and obviously she doesn't know for sure, but she said, you know, that she wouldn't be surprised if he had wanted, like, some of his followers to get pregnant, to get, I guess, to, like, you know, grow the community. So yeah, the Daydians. So he continued with this whole cult thing. And this is one of the worst parts of this whole story. And I'm going to talk about it very briefly out of respect. And I don't... But, like, you can't tell this story without bringing this up. So, there was this, one of his followers was this woman, Brittany Quinn. And the only tie, really, that Brittany had to Abby Stone is that Abby addressed a letter that Quinn had posted on Facebook, accusing her father, like, this is from the tblogger.tumblr.com, on March 19th of 2014, I think? Or when was this? Nope. It was sometime in 2010, rather.
Oof.
Yeah, this was back in 2010. On March 19th, Brittany publicly posts a note in which she accuses her father of abuse and neglect, and severs contact with him. In her August 2014 AMA, Abby says, "Oh, that letter is so disturbing. It's Andy all over it. So much of it is like what I wrote to my mother under his direction/coaching." So, he took this other woman who was kind of, you know, going through some stuff, and did exactly to her what he had done to Stone. Stone had, like, when she was with him, she was supposedly his, like, he called her his constant, and her job was to keep track of all of these people that he was channeling. One of which, by the way, I never mentioned, that person, Diamond, I mentioned, who was kind of the most innocent in all of this.
Yeah.
He killed off the Jordan Wood, Elijah Wood thing to punish her, to make her believe that she had done something wrong, and that he could no longer channel that, and made her believe that she was hurting one of her friends, just to punish her because she displeased him. And then he started channeling Orlando Bloom. So, yeah. So Brittany was one of the Daydians. And they had tried to come up with, like, they were planning this event that they were going to go to New Zealand for a hike.
Yeah.
And then on... Okay, this is where it gets really fucking hard and really awful. Brittany Quinn was estranged from her husband. And, you know, obviously was super into this whole Dadians thing.
Yeah.
On May 7th of 2010, Jason Eisenberg, who was Brittany Quinn's husband, on May 7th, Eisenberg murders Brittany Quinn and Anthony Chambers, the other person living in the Fairfield house, which is where Quinn, Chambers, and Blake were all living together. He tries to kill Andy and ends up shooting him in the ankle through the bedroom door. Eisenberg subsequently kills himself. People have fucking died. And here's where it gets really disgusting. May 16th. Andy posts his eulogy for Brittany to the DAYD Facebook group. In the final paragraphs, he says, Brittany had her heart set on the New Zealand trek. She used to say, without really joking at all, that she'd do it over her dead body if need be. And so I will. In the next post, I will be putting up what was originally Brittany's part of the to-do list. I think that if one extraordinary woman could do it, an extraordinary community definitely can in her memory. For the fallen, we have lost our first. It's worth noting that deceased members of Dumbledore's army are commonly referred to as the Fallen by Andy and the Dadians. And For the Fallen was used as a rallying cry in DAYD Chapter 7. Andy is explicitly tying Brittany's death to his fictional universe.
Yeah.
And this was a thing that he kept doing. He would use this death and, you know, and the trauma of surviving such a terrible thing to gain sympathy, to gain followers, you know, but this is kind of his MO. He apologizes, he moves on, he says, you know, I'm done with the fandom, and then he moves on to the next one. And that is by far the most disgusting thing that happened in this whole thing. Like, people got fucked out of money. He, you know, he conned a lot of people. He stole identities, the whole nine. But he used this woman's death as, like, according to some stuff I've read, he still, like, when it gets brought up, like, he still uses it to try to, I guess it's like I guess he views it as disgusting as this is. Any publicity is good publicity.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, there's a lot here. There's a lot to unpack, and I do very strongly urge everybody to look this up themselves, because there's a whole lot that I never talked about, and that I didn't, well, I either totally forgot about because there's so much, or, you know, or I didn't get to it. But yeah. Yeah. Like, just be aware, guys. There are people like this out there.
Yeah. I mean, wow. Yeah. Well, I know that was a lot to take in. Yep. But I think that's basically all the time we've got for this episode.
It definitely is.
But Before we go, we definitely wanted to give a quick shout out to our friends Bat and Gideon, who are wonderfully hosting Call the Void on their website, fearspirits.com. They are amazing, wonderful people, and you should check them out at twitch.tv/fierceferrets and on their website. They make some really wonderful comics that you should definitely go look at with your eyeballs.
Yes. Especially after
Dungeon
this.
Minis. Dungeon Minis and Beelzebub.
Yeah.
They're great and wonderful, and you probably heard of them before.
And Star Minis.
Yes, Star Minis is up now. And we'll be updating again soon. But Star Minis brings us into our next thing. If you would like to see more of us, you can catch us in The Last Light, which is our live play D&D Starfinder session. That we do every Tuesdays over on the Fierce Ferret Twitch, and is a podcast that you can listen to on all the major iTunes, like Google Play and Spotify, and Drunk Fandom. You can also catch us in that podcast as well. But with that, we will see you guys next time, and until then, sweet dreams.
Bye.